All right, we're looking at replacing the seat covers on a 2001 Audi TT, which is the MK1 original model year. So you can see the seats are torn up a bit. Leather has aged not well. So that's the project today. All right, I thought I'd show you the tools that I'm using to get this done. I've got a couple bar clamps. I've got a handful of interior upholstery tools. I've got a 17mm socket for pulling the seat belt handle off the seat, a couple of screwdrivers, a few different pliers. The red handle ones are what are known as hog ring pliers, and you can see I've got a bag of 3/8 inch hog rings, which seems to be a good size for this project. I've got a little mini bolt cutter. I've got a T-30 Torx head, and I've got it on a socket. Got a magnet, so you can see I've got some little screws on there, keep them handy. And then I've got this metal bar that the primary use comes with some metal clips that go into the back of the seat to hold the top seat cover on. So that's it, folks. It's not a huge set of tools. One more little piece that you might need. I found this one on Amazon, the AutoFix 3610. It is specifically for Audi and Volkswagen, and it worked really nice. I turned my vehicle on without having the airbag plugged in, which caused a permanent fault. This little guy will help you reset that once you have your airbags plugged back in. All right, guys, two other things I almost forgot. One, a sharp knife. You need something that can cut through leather. Two, you need the smallest little drill bit you can find, and I'll show you later what I use that for. To get the seats out requires removal of 4 bolts. Front 2 are covered with these plastic coverings, back 2 are not. I will show you the back 2 in a moment. In the meantime, this plastic covering comes off and you lift up in the middle and push forward, and they come off. Just that simple. That exposes the bolts, which are a 6-sided. However, I don't have the 6-sided, but I do have a T-50, and the T-50 seems to be doing a fine job of backing these out. So four bolts. I'm using a Torx T-30 to get them out. All right, slide the seat forward. And you'll expose 2 rear bolts. So there's one there, one there. Underneath there is an electrical connector, because these seats do have airbags, and so you'll want to make sure that you take care of that little connector as well. Disconnect it before you make too many motions on this, or disconnect the battery cables to remove any potential for electrical impulse and cause the airbag to go off. Something to be aware of: the cable for the airbag is connected up here to the seat with a hook. I've already loosened it, and so it just slides right out, and that way you can pull the seat out without any additional issues. All right, in order to finish this project, I'm going to do a quick rundown here of the things that you have to pull off the seat and apart in order to get this leather skins put on. Obviously, you have to take the headrest off, pop these little plastic. Underneath are metal holders spring clips that need to be pulled off as well, then this just slides out. On the bottom edge here, you've got these little guys. And if you see this little guy here, that's what the drill is for. You're going to put a small hole in there, and I'll show you how to get that out. This handle just pops off. This handle just pulls straight off. You want to be careful with these because likely plastic ages, and you may find that your plastic's a little brittle. There is an identical one on the other side of the seat. All right, I found it easiest to pull this handle off. That's where the socket comes in. If you notice, there's a couple of poppets here. These poppets are part of this lower back panel. There's also 2 screws, and it connects in to this other side with a clip. So once you've pulled the screws and the poppets off, and you can pull this end out, you'll need to pull it this way to get it out of that bracket. Last 2 lower pieces. You've got the handle here, it just pulls straight out. This piece of plastic work, there is a couple of screws underneath that you'll need to take out in order to get it off. And then this piece here, you'll find that there is a couple of additional poppets in behind this section right here that you'll need to take off in order to get this little piece off as well. Okay, the screws that I was talking about to get that side piece off, I found that it's easiest to pull these 2 out, and then if you look in underneath here, that little guy right there also needs to come out. All right, so as you can see, I've got the poppets out, I've pulled the screws out, so now we just pick this up out of the track here, make sure this upper edge is loose, and then pull up, and you can see the clip and how that fit in on that back side down there. All right, the side piece also has a clip on the back side of it here that is helping to secure the upholstery onto the base. So it's easiest if you pull it from the front side here to get it to come loose. And then complete pulling it off. So here's that little clip. One other thing I want to show you is that on this side of the seat, there is a hole in the existing upholstery. And the reason for that is underneath here is a steel clip that hooks onto this little guy on this panel. So as you're putting it back together, you'll need to ensure that you've got room for that and that you can figure out where that steel clip is as you put this side piece back on. All right, this little side piece, got my poppets out, so it just comes out and around like that. Okay, so now it's time for these side pieces to come off. As you can see, I've already popped the back angle adjuster handle off. I have not yet popped this one off yet. What I found on my first seat was that it was really helpful to get in from the back side with a screwdriver to try to help ease it off. But the thing that we're going to focus on at the moment is this little guy right here. I'm going to drill a small hole, and then I'm going to use a screw to pull that out to make it easier to get this piece to come loose from the seat frame. All right, so as you can see, I've got my hole now. So I'm going to take my little screw, turn him in just a couple of turns so that he's got a good grip in there. All right, and then I'm going to come in with my upholstery tool and use that to get him started. Now that he's started, I'm just going to pull that little guy right out, and that frees up this friction mount to make it a little simpler to get this piece off. All right, so this is what it looks like when it's hanging loose. Be gentle on it. It is an airbag, but you can see here you've got these two keyholes that these two bolts fit on. Once they're on, you slide it up and in. You can also see there's a little bit of leather that has been attached over here onto this little clip, so you want to take that off as well. All right, it's time for the headrest to come off, so get these loose before you get started on this. And then underneath here you can see that there's a little metal clip that rides in this here, and it connects into slots in the shafts of your headrest. So slide those clips off both sides, and then the headrest will pull right out. For those of you that are a little sharper than the rest, you've probably noticed that when I took the seat out, I was showing you the passenger seat, and this is now the driver's seat. One of the things that I did not figure out on the passenger seat was how to get these headrest shaft guides out of the way. So I'm going to try and do that this time around. It's the one thing that I didn't do on the first one, and I really regret not having gotten those out of the way. All right, with all of that off, this seat is now ready for you to pull that skin off. I'm going to do it the quick way, which is, I know that behind here is no padding. It's a piece of plastic, and that's also where the connectors for the new skin are going to connect in. It continues around here and on the other edge here. So I'm just going to knife that so that way I can get to those connectors a little more easily and pull this skin off without having to put as much effort into it as I did on the first one. So as you can see, I've got the leather mostly loose from this back side here. Now, there's one piece that I'm not going to cut because I like to have the extra leverage. This is a friction, and there are a couple metal clamps. You can see that one right there, right here on this outside edge on both sides. You need to remember this because when you go to put the next skin on, you'll need to pull these metal clamps off of this piece, so that way you have them available for the install of your new skin. As you can see, that goes right into that little slot right there. And that really is one of the more difficult parts of this, is to stretch the leather so you can turn that piece completely around like that and get it over the edge of this lip and into there, so it friction holds on this lower edge of the top piece here. Like I said, that is one of the more difficult things. You will probably want some kind of leather stretching tools, or you've got to have some really strong hands to be able to do this. Additionally, around this edge here, you notice I've still got this piece of leather here. It's attached to a plastic backer that has a bunch of little plastic clips that, so you can see right here, that fold into those little pieces in the plastic behind them. And so you've got to get this piece out as well, because without doing that, you will not have the space that you need to be able to clip your new skin back in. So I'm now ready to loosen up the lower edge of the base. As you can see here, we've got this ridge of leather that's been driven into this slot here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice so that way I have access and I can just pull that piece right off without any real effort. And you can see I didn't have to slice it very far, and it gave me plenty of extra space here to be able to work this out of the edge very easily. So I'm going to finish doing that, and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, one more thing. There is a piece of leather that is attached to the base that goes down around this little friction piece of plastic here to help hold that bottom skin on. So you also have to make sure that you loosen that up as well. All right, you can see now I've got my skins loose, both the lower and the upper. I've got my little mini bolt cutters there. It's time to start working on the hog rings that are attaching the skins to the frame of the seat still. So let's get this moving forward here. Now if you look real closely right here at the top, you'll see this little ring right here. And I'm just going to get in there with these bolt cutters, snip it off. There's another one right here in the corner. Same thing, same thing, same thing, same thing. All right, and as you can see then, once you get that, it all of a sudden pops loose. All right, so as you can see, those first hog rings were part of this edge right here. Now, each of these additional grooves in your seat are where there's a metal bar in the skin and more hog rings attached. And also down along this inside edge here, there's also the same thing. So that's what we're going to be taking apart. I'm not going to bore you with watching me do all that, and I'm going to do the same thing on the base. All right, one thing to keep in mind when you get the skin off, inside this fabric goes around the outer edge, and each one of these crossbar fabrics, there is a piece of metal. You will need to get those out because your new skin most likely will not have them, and they are required in order to be able to tighten your new skin into the seat and cushion. Now on your upper skin there are two crossbars. One is slightly longer than the other, so the shorter one goes across the top, the slightly longer one goes across the bottom. On the bottom skin you will find three. One here, one here, one here. They are in order of length: longest, mid-level, shortest. Be sure that you keep that in mind when you go to put them back in your new skin. All right, we also now have the headrest. The headrest, the leather is just friction fit into this groove right here. And so what you just have to do is get in here, pop it out like that on both sides. So it's in both from this side as well as that side. And then you can slide the whole cushion and leather off of the frame, put the leather back on, and then slide it back onto the frame before you tighten it back into the friction area there. Once you have your leather, your new headrest leather, wrapped around your foam, you can then put the foam and leather all as one back onto the frame. And then you can see that you've got these have extra reinforced leather edges, and those go into that friction slot on the headrest frame. All right, so now I've got my leather and pad back on over the frame, and now there's some leather stretching that has to go on because you got to get this piece pulled out far enough that you can turn it against itself and into that slot right there. And so that takes a little bit of muscle. Imagine if you are a professional and you have all of the right leather stretching tools, it's a lot easier. I am not, so for me it's more of just a brute force method to get her done. So I am going to do that now. All right, and with some assist from the upholstery tools to make sure that you get that in there good and tight. One headrest completed. All right, now we're ready to move on to the upholstery on the pads. Now if you notice, my lower pad has actually come off the seat, and so I'm going to put the skin back on and connect it with the hog rings into these metal supports that are built into the foam pad before I put it onto the seat base again. So I'm just going to first focus on getting the skin onto this pad, and then we'll worry about what it takes to get it onto the seat base and locked in. All right, so you can see that this is the lower seat skin that I'm going to be putting on. So remember those rods that you pulled out of your original. So when you flip this over, you'll see that you've got corresponding fabric loops on your new one that you will want to put your rods into. Now if you notice, I've got 3 different sizes here. This one goes into the closest to the front, the middle one in the middle, and the short one up on top. Now additionally, we have side rails that have to go in as well. And so we need to put those in because these rods are what the hog rings connect around to make sure that your skin stays in place and where it's supposed to on your seat cushion. So we'll have to put these in, and then I will start in on hog ringing, and I'll show you that in a moment. All right, so I've got my steel support rods in on each of my fabrics. So I'm going to flip this over, and then we're going to get started with attaching the hog ring. And I'm going to start with this uppermost or rearmost support. You want to get your hog ring into your pliers. Grab a hold of this little guy. Take your hog ring pliers with the hog ring in it. Find your midpoint. Drive it down in there so that when you squeeze it tight, it is wrapped around both the rod in the fabric and the rod in the foam. I'm going to do a couple more, and then I will let you get to it. There goes number 3. Get on in there with your pliers and your ring. And squeeze it tight. So as you can see, the foam is now firmly attached to the skin, and we'll continue to do that with each of the next 2, and then I'll come down the sides and secure it on the side as well. All right, once you have all your hog rings attached, your bottom should look something like this. So you can see the hog rings are in and pulling these edges down. We've got hog rings attached across all 3 of the cross members and the other side rail as well. So now it's time to start the process of getting it put onto the base. So there's a little bit of a tricky part here because you got to get this piece slid between the upper and the lower, and that can take a little bit of finagling to get that through. And then once you've done that and you've gotten yourself set up, then you'll start on the process of pulling the side leather. And so you'll have to stretch that leather so again you can get it pulled far enough so that you can fold it on top of itself and get it into that groove in the base of the seat. So when you get your seat initially attached, it should look something like this once it's on the frame, and it's starting to get stretched pretty good. And if you notice here as we look underneath, you can see that all of this has been folded in to the rail section here, so that way it is firmly attached to the seat frame now. All right, to make getting the seat cover the skin on the back, you have these posts, rails for the headrest. Now if you look right here on this left hand side, if you can press that in, you can pull those right up and out. So when those are in, if you can get a nice long bladed screwdriver, run it down the left side of there into the foam until you feel it hit the notch where that push in is, and then you can push it in and pull these guys right out. That'll make your life a whole lot easier when you're trying to stretch this skin over the back side. All right, so now it's time to put the skin on the upper, which again is the same basic procedure as we used on the lower, where you hog ring it in to the metal and fabric, the metal supports that are in the fabric guides, and into the metal supports that have been built into the foam of the seat back itself. So I'm going to do that now, and good luck with yours. Alrighty, got the upper skin hog ringed on. So now it's just a matter of folding it over the back and aligning these little guys up with the notches that you can see in this plastic trench. So it's a bit of stretching that'll have to happen, and then I'll be effectively done. So all I'll have to do is reinstall the headrest supports and the headrest itself, put the plastic work back on, and it'll be a day. So let's get to it. All right, we got the skins on. It's time to secure the back edges of the two upper and lower skins. So what I found is that because the bottom seat is spring-loaded, bar clamps bring it up to full tension, and squeezing those springs all the way down as far as they'll go makes it a whole lot easier to stretch this rear and get it mounted. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the original screws that were holding on the old one. I found that I can't actually get this lip onto anything real on the bottom of this. So that's one deficiency of this vendor product. But all things considered, it's a pretty minor deficiency. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to go through the plastic in these two screw holes and secure it that way. Alright, so I've got that secured. Now some of you that are thinkers are saying to yourself, but those two screws held on a back plastic piece that still needs to go back on, and you would be right. I'm going to do this as a two-step process. The first is just to secure the base. I'll get the upper secured on its lower edge, and then when I go to do the plastic, I will put that back on, and I'll take one of these screws out at a time with the clamps on, and that way I can put that piece of plastic work back on as well. So that's the way it's going to go. So if you were thinking about why I was using those two screws, there's your answer. Alright, so I got the lower edge of the upper pulled through, and remember I told you about those little metal clamps. Well, you can see I've opened mine up so that way I can put them back on to this new skin here along the two corners. And so what I'll then do is I'll attach a device I'm going to use to stretch this out, so that way I can flip it around and get those two corners in with these clamps in place, so that way it will hold itself secure just like it was doing with the original. Alright, once you've got the upper skin fully on and secured in the back, then you will have to do something that will break your heart, which is cut a hole into your brand new leather, so that way you can reinstall these headrest post guides. So now if you notice, I'm putting it in. I've got the notch here to what would be my right now. If I was looking at it from the front of the seat, it would be my left. And then you gotta kind of work your way around that. So work the leather up and over it, so that way it will slide on past. So you don't want to make too big a hole, and leather will stretch, so you can kind of work it around until it will find its way past. So alright, so I've worked the leather around, and then you just keep pushing down until it clicks into place. Alright, and you've now got your two headrest holders. So one of the last steps here before we start putting all the plastic work back on is to reassemble the headrest onto the seat, and then we'll be done after we put the plastic back on. Alright, so you can see I've got my seat skinned. I've got a couple of creases down there at the bottom I'm going to have to smooth out a little bit by just working the pad and working the leather. And then I've got to do one more cut in the leather over here, because remember, this piece of plastic work has that key in it that slides up in, so we'll have to find that. I think it's right about here. I can feel a bit of an indentation there, so we're gonna have to cut a keyhole there, so that way we can put the side plastic back on. But basically that all goes on. The opposite of how it came off. So I would refer you back to the start of all this, where we showcased how we were taking it all apart, and just reverse those directions.